Radio Free Palmer 89.5 KVRF presents Mushing Radio, hosted by Robert Forto. Mushing Radio is about dog-powered sports, living in the Great White North, and mushing. Visit our website at mushingradio.com. Here is your host, Robert Forto.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Robert Forto, and you're listening to our Iditarod coverage here on KVRF 89.7 in the Matsu Valley. RadioFreePalmer.org is our live streaming site. You can hear all of our episodes on RadioFreePalmer.org or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you will get notified as soon as an episode drops. You do not want to miss these. And be sure to check us out on social media by searching DogWorks Radio. And tonight, both of my co-hosts are on. We have Tony Ryder calling in from Kenai, Alaska, and we have Alex Stein calling in from California. Tony, how's it going tonight?
Pretty good. We're still digging out from all the snow today. I don't know if you guys got it up there, but we got it down here pretty bad.
Yep, it is a huge dumping up here. I don't know when it's going to end, but it's well above our waist, and this is a heavy snow year for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex, how's it going tonight?
It's going great. I've just been watching the standings and the tracker for a lot of today, and we're at that point in the race where things are a little bit confusing in terms of who is where on the trail, because a bunch of teams, since we were last on, have taken completed 24-hour rests, and other teams have completed 8-hour rests. So the field and who is at which point in the trail looks a little bit different than it did this time last night. But it's interesting because I think we're starting to see some definite patterns emerging in this race. And I'm very excited about where it's going.
Yeah, and we do have a bunch of updates tonight, including an entirely new trail in terms of how they're going to run the race. We have some interesting news about the halfway prizes, but we also have a scratch today, and that is Brenda Mackey. And we're going to start off with Tony. What do you know about the scratch with Brenda?
Just what they've said through the official statement, which was she scratched for in the best interest of her team. She was down to 9 dogs when she scratched in Nikolai. And that's pretty far back on the trail. She still had a lot of miles to cover. And that's a lot to put on 9 dogs. So I think that was probably the right choice.
Right. And for folks that may not know, the mushers start out with teams of 14 dogs. That's the max that you can have. And the rules state that you have to finish with 5. So if you're only with 9 dogs with well more than half the race to go, something usually is happening on the team. Most of the time you don't drop dogs just to drop them that early in the race. And I say that because sometimes that's a strategy to get rid of some of the dogs during a portion of the race. I know Dallas Seavey is known for that, as well as other mushers. They will have as few dogs as possible so they can shorten their chores up in the checkpoints and have optimal care to be taking care of them on the trail. And of course, smaller dog teams are a heck of a lot easier to handle. I can imagine going up and down those mountains on the way back. It may be beneficial to have a smaller dog team. And again, that's up to strategy, of course, for sure. Anything else that you know about Brenda, Alex, before we jump into our topic?
No, it's just that I suspect that there was probably something going on with some of her dogs. Maybe they weren't quite performing as well. It also could be that some of her dogs were sick. But as you both said, especially this year where teams are going to go back over the Alaska range again, it's worrisome only to have 9 dogs at this point in the race. And I'm looking at the standings now, and I just wanted to point out that there's a rookie named Christopher Parker and he's resting in McGrath right now, and it looks like he is down to 8 dogs.
Wow.
So he had dropped a couple of dogs, and then he had 12, and then he dropped 4 dogs, I believe at Nikolai, and that's concerning too, because if eight dogs, you don't have a lot of flexibility. Like if you lose one more dog, then you're sort of on the precipice. And by lose, of course, I mean if you leave a dog at a checkpoint to be returned back to Anchorage. But if you only have 7 dogs, that's starting to be where it might not be enough. And then if anything happens to one of the dogs, you're down to 6. And so that's something that is concerning to me, especially for a rookie.
Tony, I believe the rules say 5 dogs in harness at the finish. Is that the correct rule?
I think so. I'm trying to pull it up now, and my computer's not wanting to play nice with me, but I think it's still 5.
Alex, do you know the answer?
Yeah, I believe it's 5.
Okay. All right. So let's jump into our topic. We alluded to a different race format at the start of the show, and they have changed the trail. Tell us about that, Alex, and what was the reason for the decision?
So what they were going to do was go out to Iditarod, the town of Iditarod, which is sort of an old ghost town, an old mining town, and then go on a short loop out to an area called Flat. And that was going to be about 20 miles to Flat and then back, and then going the opposite way down the trail that they just came. But what happened is that the trail breakers were unable to put in a decent trail from Iditarod out to Flat. And some of the reports I've seen said that the snow was up to people's eyeballs. So an enormous amount of snow. I believe a lot of it was kind of snow that wasn't really compressed and packing. So it was very difficult to make that into a passable route. So the Iditarod decided that they're just going to have people go out to the town of Iditarod and then turn around and come back from there. So this is making what already was a slightly slightly shorter course even shorter. So we're looking at now a total length of about 832 miles or so. And I believe it was supposed to be closer to 860 with this flat loop in as well.
So, Alex, I'm going to ask this because I have not researched enough to know about this course this year. Maybe you know, but isn't it customary that the trail breakers work on the trail for several weeks before the race happens? You know, they'll go out and put in bridges over open water and make sure the trail is good. And it seems to me they do a heck of a lot of work ahead of time. And now they have just said, well, we're going to knock off 40 miles, 20 there, 20 back. I don't know if they've done that before in a long while, especially at a last moment like this. Is there reasoning behind it because it's just this weird year, or something different?
I think it's a combination of things. There aren't as many. My impression is there are not as many trail breakers out there to because, as you said, they put in the trail a couple weeks in advance, and then there are trail breakers on snow machines who go out and make sure that the next portions of the trail are good and are passable. And I think there are a lot fewer trail breakers who are actually out there right now. So that's part of it. And I think also there has just been a tremendous amount of snow there relatively recently. So the worry was that they wouldn't be able to put in the trail quickly enough before people were trying to use it to go out to flat.
Okay. And as I'm sitting here thinking about it as you talk, once they get to what we usually call the second third of the race, once they hit the Yukon, that's already an established trail that's used by many, many people, snow machines and dog teams and just regular travel, and that goes all the way to Nome. So I guess I answered my own question, because they're using a route that they typically don't use, which is that section of the trail, and that's probably why they didn't do any work on it. Tony, do you want to add anything to that? Have you heard any other news or nuggets in relation to why they changed?
From what I gathered from the little bit that we got last night, and I haven't actually been able to keep up with it today, but it sounded like with the snowstorm that has been hitting the trail, that added to the problem. The type of snow is not one that was doing what was more powder than it was something like Alex said that you can compact. And so their machines were having a difficulty dealing with that. And I think, too, just because the race is faster and with all of the overflow on the river, especially coming into McGrath, the machines were, the trail breakers just weren't able to get out ahead of the race fast enough. And so they just ran out of time.
Well, at least it'll be quicker in terms of finish, and we talked about that before. Even though 40 miles isn't that big a deal, it's about, I don't know, a half a day, 3 or 4 hours of travel on the trail. It's not that big a deal in terms of time that way. Alex, we have another award that they're going to announce today, or I guess they already have, with the first to the halfway point, which is now Iditarod, and that is Brent Sass. And I guess the halfway point would have been that checkpoint in Flat, but now they've changed it. But they have a very interesting award, don't they?
Yeah, traditionally, this has been $3,000 in gold nuggets for the Dorothy G. Page Halfway Award. And this year, Brent will get his choice of either $3,000 in gold nuggets, or, because it's sponsored by GCI, a smartphone with a year of service from GCI. So it feels kind of like Iditarod is reluctantly entering the 21st century with this award.
Yeah, we talked about it right before air, and you notice they said smartphone, and we were thinking about one of those cheap Korean knockoff smartphones that you can get. And you notice they did not say iPhone 12 Pro Plus. They said smartphone. Right. So I think that he may be sorely mistaken. And, a little tongue-in-cheek humor here, but if you remember, Brent Sass was the musher that was disqualified a few years back because he had a smartphone on the trail, and he got busted for having it, and he said it was just for music or whatever, but he better not get caught with this new one. What do you think, Tony?
Well, they are allowed to have the two-way communication now, so I don't think he has to worry about that anymore, but that is a good point.
That is for sure. So, Alex, with the halfway point there, conceivably, he will turn around there at Iditarod, and he's going to have a bunch of head-on passes coming up in the very near future without that extra 40 miles. That could be really interesting as he and the others that are right behind him as he leaves Iditarod. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I believe he is, because Brent hasn't taken any of the mandatory rests. So I believe he's going to stay in Iditarod for his 24. At least that's sort of the speculation. There's a couple of teams who are kind of breathing down his neck. Aaron Peck and Millie Porsild are not too far away from where Brent is. So that's going to be a very interesting thing to see who because of the the mandatory rest, is going to be able to go forward. And Aaron hasn't taken any rest either. Millie has taken, I believe, her 8, but not her 24. So conceivably, she could get into Iditarod and possibly turn around and be the first person who's coming back towards the start and finish.
And Tony, I know I saw something, I don't know if it was Facebook or Twitter, yesterday, possibly the day before, about the possibility of declaring both a 24-hour rest and an 8-hour rest at the same time, since we have this wacky format where they have to do their rests in between the two roan checkpoints there. So for anywhere between roan and roan, that circle back. Do you know the answer to that? Can they do both at the same time? So in effect, 36 hours of full rest at one spot?
I haven't gotten an official answer, but my gut tells me that no, it isn't. I think what they were doing is you have to declare a rest if you're going to take that rest and have it credited as that. So a lot of the mushers, when they came into Nikolai and McGrath both, they were like, yeah, I'm going to declare both. I don't know which one I'm taking, if I'm taking one, but I want credit from the time I'm here until I leave, just in case I take that 8 or that 24. Most of the ones that said they were declaring their 24 left an 8.
Okay.
When they declared both. So my assumption is it was just, we don't know yet. we're not decisive this year.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the past, they've been very explicit about not letting you take your 24 and your 8 at the same checkpoint. So I assume that it's still that way.
Mm-hmm.
So my next question is to Tony. I know that you're an insider. You're following the video and you're commenting on a lot of what you see. In any other year besides this, people make their decisions to stop at one place or another based on the accommodations at some of these checkpoints. And we've talked about on the show about the hospitality in McGrath and the pies in Takotna and, all of that type of stuff. Is there any expectation of accommodations that are better or worse at some of these places along the trail this year, since most of the places where they're stopping is away from the normal activities?
Right. McGrath seems to be the one, and why I think a lot of them are stopping in McGrath. They have an area that they can go in and get dry, which most of the teams coming in from McGrath needed to do because there was a wicked amount of overflow this year. Every one of them just came in saying that they were completely soaked. And from what I gathered from one of the interviews that Liz Raines did with, I don't even remember which musher, they mentioned that this was pretty much the only place that they could charge electronics.
Okay.
Be it their cell phone or, if they have those battery operated headlamps or whatever. This is pretty much it. And it honestly looks like the closest that we're used to of an Iditarod checkpoint from these, especially from this area.
So, Alex, we've talked about in years past about a lot of the mushers will ship out extra sleds and extra gear to McGrath because they have a larger, quote-unquote, larger airstrip than many other places along the trail. They can get in bigger planes, so they'll drop off these extra sleds and extra gear. Is that still the case this year? Did you know if a lot of these guys did ship out their typical smaller sleds like they do in the past? And I asked that because they often switch because, the tough spot of the trail is done, meaning the mountains and the burn. But now here they go back through it, and those lighter, smaller sleds may not hold up as well as the typical Iditarod sled. Any news on that?
I don't have anything specific about that, but that makes a lot of sense. There's regular commercial air traffic in and out of McGrath. So that makes it kind of a hub in general for drop dogs are usually flown to McGrath, and then from McGrath it's easier to get them back to Anchorage. So I assume that there are a bunch of sleds that are sort of stacked up somewhere that were sent out to McGrath.
Okay, before we jump into our musher profile of the evening, I want to give a shout out to the Ugly Dogs crew. They are really active again this year on Twitter, and I would like to hear from both of you guys on this, because I know you guys are both very active in that community. Alex, can you start us off for folks that are listening that may not be familiar with what the Ugly Dogs are? What have they done in the past in terms of, their fundraising efforts that they've done before? And do they have any particular projects this year? And then, Tony, I would just like you to expand on a little bit of what Alex has to say, because both of you guys are much more active with that group than I am. So go ahead and start us off, Alex. What do you think about the Ugly Dogs?
I love the Ugly Dogs. They are passionate, and they are very committed, and they are funny and silly and a lot of fun online and in person, although not this year in person. In the past few years, starting with when Blair was running, the Ugly Dogs have organized something that they call Iditarod, and that is where they collect donations for charitable organizations, for Alaskan schools, for Native arts organizations and LGBTQ organizations. And there is a big list of these things. And in 2019, the Iditarod raised over $100,000. I'm not sure exactly how much it was, but it was maybe $120,000 to give to all of these organizations, all of these schools, teachers who are looking for money to buy supplies with. There was one school, native school from a village, where they were raising money to take the kids into Anchorage for a trip to go to museums, all sorts of great things like that. Last year, they did it again during Iditarod. It raised, I think, about $60,000. It was, as you may recall, a strange year because COVID sort of shut down the world in the middle of the race. And this year they're doing it again, and people who are interested can go to iditarod.com, and there's a list of places that you can donate to directly and have your donation counted as part of this. And there's also a group called Donor's Choice, which has a lot of specific organizations and projects, almost all in Alaska, I believe, that are linked directly into the Iditarod fundraising efforts.
Tony, what's your take on this social media movement that happens every Iditarod?
I love it. I can remember when it was you, me, Alex, and just a few others on Twitter talking about Iditarod, and we felt like we were just kind of yelling into a void. And now we have this huge community that's willing and ready to learn. And yes, they're more focused on Blair and Quince and the mushers that they talk about in their stories, but they cheer for every musher. It's kind of crazy how just enthusiastic and encouraging they are when the mushergrams, which they aren't doing this year, my understanding is, but when they found out that the mushergrams were something that Iditarod did, where you could call in and, just give a little bit of encouragement, and they would get that to the musher at the next checkpoint, there were stacks of messages. And I was in Nome that year when they were giving out the stacks to the mushers, but they couldn't get it to them before Nome. And I can't remember which musher it was. I want to say it was Jesse Royer and Travis Fields, but they both had these two giant stacks of mushergrams, and they're like, who the heck are the ugly dogs? And I felt like that was just like the theme of Iditarod 2019, because all of a sudden you have this wave of new fans. And it's just so nice to have new energy and new excitement about the race. People willing to learn, people willing to try and understand, because a lot of the ugly dogs came into mushing with a lot of apprehension, because all they see are the animal rights posts from the Dodo and other organizations. And so, you know, I don't know, I just love it. They come help me volunteer. They're just a great group of people.
The other cool thing that they did last year is once they discovered the whole mushergram thing, there was this rush to like send out mushergrams, and then people started realizing, well, wait a minute, there are all of these teams on the trail. We don't want you know, Blair. We don't want Quince to get all of the mushergrams and other people not to get them. So they made this spreadsheet to make sure that every musher was getting mushergrams, so that people wouldn't feel left out. And that's just a great thing.
So it's kind of a little bit of a mashup between grade school Valentine's Day and Teen Beat magazine, with all the sacks of fan mail that come in to the movie stars. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. But does that make Dallas Seavey? Would he then be? I don't know. Pick your teen idol.
Andy Gibb. He's the newest.
Andy Gibb. There you go.
So
I was going to say David Cassidy because I'm old, but
right.
Makes me so happy.
So Alex, I just want to touch on this one more second for the ugly dogs, but we've talked about this over the last few years. But you and I both agree that this is the future of Iditarod with these guys, because you know it's a different way to follow the race. Not only are they active over the 2 weeks of Iditarod, but these guys are a force to be reckoned with, especially on Twitter all year round. I mean, there are Iditarod and mushing discussions with the hashtag ugly dogs that go on 365, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And I think that it's really important, if we want the sport to thrive and to grow, to really embrace these new fans. And to be, you know, obviously we want as long-term fans for there to be a reward for people who've been long-term fans, and we want them to get maybe some subtleties out of the race that you wouldn't necessarily get as a newbie. But we can't really grow this race and this sport if we're not bringing new people into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, let's do what we do and do our musher profile of the evening. It happens to be another rookie. It's 3 rookies in a row, which I really like, because we're not just focusing on the names that everybody knows about. Tonight, we're talking about Dakota Schlossler. What do you know about Dakota, Alex?
So Dakota is 23 years old, which incidentally makes me feel ancient. Works as a diesel and heavy equipment mechanic for Knick Constructions. He's been racing sled dogs for 17 years, so since he was 5 or 6. Moved to Alaska with his family from a small town in Wisconsin called Westboro in 2012. And before that, he had been mostly doing sprint mushing, and then changed from doing sprint to trying to do more distance mushing. His mother is a vet tech, among other things. His father is a welder. And he has a race kennel that he has raised almost entirely from puppies. So he has about 50 dogs, including 10 puppies that are like very, very new, and 20 main race dogs. He competed in the junior Iditarod in 2014 and 2015, and got Rookie of the Year his first year, and then I believe his second year came in fourth. Last year, he raced the Alpine Creek 300, where he won the Humanitarian Award, the Cusco 300, the Willow 300, and the Tug Bar 150. He says that he has dreamed of running the Iditarod since he was 10 years old and is very excited about finally doing it this year. The dogs that he has on his team this year running Iditarod are mostly the same dogs, or at least the core group is the same dogs that he ran the junior Iditarod with, which is kind of cool. He has dogs. His favorite dogs, he says, are from what he calls the candy bar litter. A lot of mushers will have litters that have themes, and he had a litter where all the dogs were named after candy bars. So he has dogs like Butterfingers, Snickers, York, Hershey, and Almond Joy. And he says that none of his 14 dogs that he's taking with him on Iditarod have ever run Iditarod before. And that strikes me as very unusual, because even people who have raised their own kennels will usually have one or two dogs from an established Iditarod team, or dogs that have run Iditarod for somebody else, and are just sort of are there to provide that kind of dog gravitas and show the other younger dogs the way. So it's unusual, I believe, to have an Iditarod team where none of the dogs have ever run Iditarod before. He said that he hasn't, unlike a lot of people who come into mushing, he's never worked as a handler for anybody else or worked extensively with anyone else's dogs. And he said that he doesn't particularly have one mentor, but he's talked to and gotten guidance from many, many different mushers, most notably Travis Fields and Jeff King. He is unbelievably relaxed and laid back in interviews, to the point where I sometimes am watching him and want to just say, you realize you're running Iditarod, and you should be a little bit more excited about that. But I guess that's just the way that he is. He said that his basic goal for this race is just to finish and get good experience for all of his dogs and make sure that they're all happy. But he said after he's made sure that he's doing that, he wants to have a good run and wants to, do relatively well, considering that he's a rookie and that these dogs haven't run the race before. He said at several of the checkpoints that his dogs are doing really well and that he is basically just following his plan from the beginning. He also said that he learned a tremendous amount from the rookie meeting this year, specifically about what to feed dogs and how much they should get in terms of snacks and things like that. And there's a great podcast called, I believe, Husky Tales, which is done by a group of third graders. He appeared on that podcast, and they asked him what his favorite song was, and I am pleased to report that his favorite song is "Congratulations" by Post Malone. So he is doing very well at the moment. He is in McGrath. He's one of a large group of mushers in McGrath. I believe there are like 27 or 28 of them that are in McGrath right now. He came in 36th place, but his dogs looked really good, and it seems like he is going to have a very good and successful rookie run.
Excellent. And I definitely have a few things to say about Dakota as well, but let's let Tony go. Do you have anything else to add about Dakota Schlossler?
He has one of the brightest sled bags ever.
Yeah, yeah. Interestingly enough that you brought that up, Tony, I read somewhere, again, I always refer to Danny Seavey's post because he is just a master at Facebook Iditarod updates. But he said today somewhere that it really takes a village or a team to do Iditarod. Almost always, it's not just the musher doing it. And I will say that Dakota and his family are that team. I know the Schlosslers pretty well. I met them before they moved up here and have been friends with them over the last, I don't know, however many years they've lived here together. And they truly are a family that's all about mushing and doing things as a unit. I believe I said on our kickoff show that the family makes the sled dog system sleds, which a lot of teams use these days. Back in the days before, people were still using the wooden sleds and the hockey stick sleds and the sleds that people have been using for the last 20 odd years. And when Dan, who is the dad in the family, came up, he introduced the mushing community, especially up here in Alaska, to a brand new sled type. And it started out with the Trail Dragger with Jeff King, and then of course it is accumulated with what Dakota is running right now with his really fancy sled bag and trailer that can pop up and have a cot in it and a tent and the whole 9 yards. That is the future of dog sleds for sure. And that sled bag that Tony was talking about, Dakota's brother Josh is his name, right, Michelle? Yeah, Josh, that's his business, is he makes sled bags. And that one was, of course, made in particular for his brother Dakota with all the bright colors and, all the pockets and all that. They are a great family, and I encourage you guys to check them out on Facebook, check out Sled Dog Systems on Facebook, and get to know these folks, because I think that Dakota and potentially his brother will be around Iditarod for a while.
Very cool.
Very good.
Before we leave, I just wanted to have a quick update about Allie Zirkle. Apparently, Allie had a badly dislocated shoulder and ran into something, or something ran into her when she was coming down towards Roan, and then she was able to get back on the sled and mush another 5 miles into the checkpoint.
5 miles.
And I think that really says something about, first of all, it says something about her toughness, but I think it also says something about her relationship to her dogs, because it's several people who were at the checkpoint said it was really clear that there was something that was wrong, and the dogs must have sensed this, and the dogs really, just brought her in so that she could be taken care of. And she is back home in Two Rivers right now, and hopefully will make a complete recovery. But as I know, the shoulders are very, very painful.
And I would be remiss by saying, Alex, that without saying that you have a heck of a lot of experience with this, not only with dislocated shoulders, but also dog mushing and receiving a dislocated shoulder. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah. I started having a little bit of a flashback when I saw the thing last night. But of course, I can't say it enough, but Allie Zirkle is just a remarkable person and such a valuable member of the mushing community. And whether or not she sticks to her plans to retire, she has given so much to this sport, and I am kind of sad that people aren't really able to show her how much they love her and value her. I'm sure they will be able to at some point, even if she doesn't run another race. But yeah, we just really want her to get well and wish her the best.
Very good.
On that note,
go ahead, Tony.
Sorry. On that note, her sponsor, Matson, before the race started, they created a website, and I wish I could remember it off the top of my head. But if you just type in Matson and Allie Zirkle into Google, I'm sure it'll pop right up. But to show her some appreciation from the fans, they have a website set up. You can send messages to her through that. I think they were going to present it to her at her finish. She's essentially finished just a little bit earlier than she planned. And they're still taking messages in. So definitely send her love through that, or her Facebook page is up, and they allow posts and private messages to that. So definitely show her some love, because it's hard all the way around, not only physically, but I'm sure emotionally.
Right. One last thing, Alex, we talked about this at the top of our coverage on Saturday, that this was going to be a very fast race. And here we are on Wednesday night, and they are already past the halfway point, or getting ready to make that flip on their way back. I can't believe how fast this is. Typically, man, we're just getting warmed up, and we're almost halfway done with this. Anything else you want to mention before we close tonight?
Just that when you look at the standings, make sure that you look at those checks for the 8-hour and the 24-hour rest, because if someone is far ahead and they haven't taken any rest, that means that they have 24 hours or 32 hours that they are going to have to be sitting somewhere while other teams are moving.
Yep, for sure. And Tony, do you have anything else you want to say before we go?
I'm looking at who's sitting in Ophir and talking about the rest. And there are several of the top teams who they've already taken their 8, and they're in Ophir taking their 24. I don't know if that's something that we should be paying attention to, but my gut tells me that's significant, and I think we might have the Iditarod champion sitting in Ophir right now.
Wow, that's a big prediction. So we're going to.
I know, and I just jinxed them all.
Nope, you didn't name any names. So that is something that we'll definitely be talking about tomorrow and on Friday for sure. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. On behalf of my co-host this year, Tony Ryder, who is calling in from Kenai, Alaska, and Alex calling in from California. We will be back on tomorrow night, and of course, we will be here every night until the last team finishes, and I think that may be less than a week away. I think we'll be done by next Wednesday if everything works out as it is. I think we're going to have a really quick coverage here on the radio. Guys, thank you, and we'll talk again soon, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
On behalf of my co-host, this is Robert Forto for Dogworks Radio. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From Dogworks Radio, this is Mushing Radio. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you'll see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Alex Stein and Robert Forto. Our producer is Robert Forto, created for Dogworks Radio.